Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America.
In Connecticut's 4th Congressional District, my home district, and this is my home here. So, Ben, it's an honor to have you by the home, and it's an honor to have you at the show.
Thanks for having me out here.
All right. Well, how's campaign?
It's interesting. I'm naturally gregarious, so I like to talk to people.
Good.
The logistics stuff, organizing things, getting out to these kind of events, podcasts, that kind of stuff, and making sure I get to places on time is not my best, but actually talking.
Hey, you were here earlier than I expected. So, and for folks listening at home, it's 9:00 on a Friday night. So you're doing the work, and I appreciate we were talking a little bit.
I told Mark it's a one-car family, so I had to wait till my wife got home from work, and that's what we did.
So we were discussing retail politics, and it doesn't get any more retail than this. Yes, this is my dining room table here, and I appreciate you coming by. So tell me, we'll start with why did you decide to run for Congress? So.
I think, I am a child of I'm a Gen X, so I saw a lot of my friends have to go off to war in Iraq. I'm actually a son of my uncles. Two of my uncles came from Panama. Mm-hmm. They had no legal status here in the United States. The only reason they were allowed to come in is because they needed people to fight in the wars in Korea and Vietnam. And that, obviously we have a lot of people in higher echelons of power, such as, Cheney, Dick Cheney, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, all the people who were drafted. They should have, they were basically, they found a way to get out of the work. And we had to bring people like my two uncles up here to do the fighting. So, to me, it seems like we're in a pattern now. I'm an advocate for peace. I'm a peace candidate, and I want to give the people of the Connecticut's 4th basically an option to vote for peace. I think peace has a lot of benefits, but we can get into that. But I don't. Basically, you should at least have an option on the table, and I don't think that those options exist in either the Democrat or Republican candidates right now.
Fair enough. And that's why it's great to see that you're running on a third party, an independent party, and it's actually kind of the heritage of New England. We've got Bernie Sanders, of course. We've got Angus King up in Maine, who does caucus with the Democrats, but he is an independent. And then Olympia Snowe, previously in Maine, Susan Collins. We're both Republicans, but we're very centrist. And so, I think it's a nice tradition. It's a tradition for the United States to have third party candidates. And What do you say when people are like, you're a spoiler, or what's the reaction that you've been getting?
Well, I personally think it's I actually canvassed for Jill Stein to get on the ballot. I have my own issues with Jill Stein, but she does bring up a good point, which is that 60% of voters are clamoring for more options to vote for. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say, "Hey, we want more options," and then when you vote for one of those new options, it's unacceptable. So we as a political body are looking for more options, and I welcome that. I think it's it just gives. It gives, this is what people do all over the world. They have multi-party systems, and I think it's something that we really, really need to introduce into the United States.
I remember, back in college, Ralph Nader calling it the American duopoly, and he's been singing this sad song for a very, very long time. And why? Any sense of why it is that we're given the two choices? 100 years ago, I think it was the Whig Party. There were a few other parties, but it tended to only be A and B.
What is it? 2007, they got rid of I forget the name of the court case that got rid of basically a campaign finances of McCain Feynman. One of those. Yes. And it's just been overwrought with money. I think no shade on Vice President Harris, but I think she got something over $1 billion.
Oh, big haul.
And I want to say 90% of that is big dollar donors. You hear something like Bill Gates gave $50 million and kept it on the hush hush. It's a lot.
There's been a lot,
and I think it's beyond Americans to believe that they're being given this money without the expectation that they're going to. That it's not some kind of quid pro quo, that it's just out of the generosity of their heart. So I think it's the introduction of money into the system, and that's a good start. There might be other reasons, but I think that's probably one of the primary ones.
It's a big one. I think, if I remember correctly, McCain running in 2008 was the last person to take public funding running for president. And now you can, unless you're independently wealthy. That's it. And there's not very men and women in the world that are independently wealthy enough that they can drop $2 billion. Maybe they could run for a city office or a state office where, but you got to drop in the billions.
Yeah.
And the barrier to entry is high.
Agreed.
So let me ask you this, just from I always like to ask pure tactical questions. How did you get on the ballot? Is there a website that you just go sign up? How does one do it?
So I honestly think the independent party tradition here in Connecticut is a wonderful one. They maintain ballot lines. They try to. I think in Connecticut you need to maintain 1% in order to stay on the ballot.
Okay.
And they just make it. It's a group of a cadre of people here in Connecticut who are part of this party, and they work tirelessly. It's a small group, but they work tirelessly to make sure that they maintain ballot lines from dog catcher all the way up to Senate. Up to the Senate level. Here
and that is the independent party.
And that is the independent party.
Okay.
And then they have a selection process. So I had to go through a nomination process. There was a couple other people on the line who were.
I see. Okay.
But then they look over basically people's resumes, what they think about them, and then they, as a group, they get together as a nominating group and decide, okay, we think that this guy is going to be a good choice in the 4th district. And they try to center around. They try to center around Connecticut politics. What is this person? What is they going to do for infrastructure, for schools, for that kind of thing? That should be your emphasis. But obviously, once you get into the federal office, you start looking at international affairs, that kind of stuff as well.
So you're an engineer by trade.
Yes.
Not exactly the most, but maybe that's exactly why.
Maybe. I see a lot. I work in a manufacturing facility.
Okay.
And so I see people from blue collar up to white collar. What happens? I can see the effects of policy. I can see when Trump's, for example, when he put in the trade.
A lot of trade barriers and trade protections and tariffs. And
to be fair, we saw when it comes to business, it's ultimately about dollars and cents. But when it made more sense to keep tooling and jobs here because manufacturing here was cheaper, then that was the decision that the company made because it made more sense, dollars and cents. And when those barriers were lifted and it made sense to send it to China or to Mexico, then we saw different results.
Sure.
So it's you can see the political effects of what happens when different leadership is in place. That's just one example. But it's maybe that being an engineer does have some in a manufacturing facility does have some insights that maybe other people might not have.
Yeah, I was thinking it more from a brain, a way of organizing, systematizing things. But the way that you pointed out that you have a window into both the white and blue collar world, most people don't. Most people are either blue collar or you're sitting in an office and the only time you see somebody who's blue collar is when maybe, I don't know, a light bulb goes out and somebody's got to fix a fuse somewhere, and that's a different perspective. Yeah. So what are you hearing? What are people telling? What are people's pain points?
I hear a lot. And a lot of it's quite surprising. My last 2 Uber rides, I took a couple of Uber rides to Bridgeport from Norwalk just because, again, logistics isn't my thing. I missed the train and I had to get over there. And I'm hearing from these ladies who work in 7 days a week, and they're saying, as much as they might want to vote for Kamala, they feel like money's better and things might have been better under Trump. That's their opinion, but that is the word that I'm hearing on the street. And I can't fault them if they're working 7 days a week, doing Uber and bus driving and this and that with the things that I heard. It's a lot to ask them to vote if they think that this is in their interest. I'm not going to shame them for that.
So you're saying inflation?
Inflation, just generally the wages, stagnant wages, that kind of thing. Where obviously a lot of these people that I'm coming in contact with, they're working more than 40 hours. They're working a lot more and barely hanging on to get by. So,
I mean, you're basically what James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid.
Yes. Much more succinct than that thing that I just said.
But, I mean, but that's hearing it on the local boots on the ground perspective. And, he's saying it as a national campaign strategist. But here we are zooming in all the way down to the 4th Congressional District on you taking an Uber on 95, from Norwalk to Bridgeport, Connecticut. So tell us about the district. I mean, it is a very, very district.
It is. We come up. My son was in he's been at a couple summer camps in Richfield. Obviously, it's I forget sometimes it's a little bit of a hike to get up here, but I do get to travel the district quite a bit. I generally have to go between Norwalk and Stratford, so I'm all over. I'm through large sections of it. I mean the need is great in a lot of our cities. I have to say I have been concentrating in Stamford, Bridgeport, Norwalk,
right?
And there's quite a bit of need,
right?
I was at at a food pantry in Bridgeport, and just seeing the lines line up. People standing there 3 hours in advance, 4 hours in advance of when the food's going to be dispersed, and they're asking me, I got there early because I was trying to disseminate, get there to help prepare the food,
right?
And they're in line, ready to be the first ones to get the food. So it's you're seeing a lot of need that I think it remains hidden. And I know I've been checking the Mirror and some of the other publications are talking about how homelessness is at its all-time high. Obviously, the governor knows that we have 100,000 unit shortage in terms of housing in general. It's a lot, and it just feels like the political establishment isn't up to the task. The current one, whoever that might be, whoever the incumbents are, that they're just not meeting the moment.
And you're saying in Congress here, our current representative, or are you saying more nationwide? Are you saying more governor?
Whoever's there now, it should be on the lookout. Whoever in whatever district you are, that's my personal opinions. I think that people are, that there's a reason people are looking at third parties. They're looking everywhere for other solutions.
Right. So. And, the district stretch is south, just for folks listening, and this is the southwest corner of Virginia. I was going to say Virginia. I do love southwest Virginia, but the southwest corner of Connecticut.
I graduated Virginia. I like Virginia, too.
And, so we've got the so-called, I don't know if anybody really calls it this, but the Gold Coast of Greenwich, of Darien, of Westport, home to probably the largest concentration of hedge funds of anywhere in the world. And then you have, poorer areas of one of the poorest areas of the state is Bridgeport. So kind of bookending with extreme wealth on one side and really a developing city, hopefully on its way up on the other.
I hope the best for Bridgeport, but I mean there's some key indicators that that's not the case. One of the things I'm fighting for is that Bridgeport, the superintendent probably for the best is attempting to close 6 schools in public schools because they're dilapidated.
Wow.
And I think it's hard for us, again, as the peace candidate, it is hard for me to say, yes, we need to prioritize the wars abroad in Gaza and Ukraine and funding in Taiwan. It's just hard for me to say that this is the priority. This is what we have to put first, and then they say that our public schools. Obviously, we fund public schools mostly with state funds, but
Right.
this is happening all over the country. Detroit either is about to or is in the process of closing 40 public schools. So it's a process that you're seeing take place all over the country.
Right.
And people are starting to. I think the public is starting to say, "Hey, this is." You can see that from the response to Hurricane Helene, where people are looking up and saying, "Hey, what are we paying these taxes for if it's not for our own needs?"
Sure. I mean, so maybe that is a way of kind of bridging, because you are the peace candidate, and I think you've got six parts of your platform. One of them is an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, and second one's a 24th century peace dividend, and then a third one is retool and diversify our military. So maybe it sounds to me like your platform is a bit of an America first, or at least not getting involved in intervention, bringing that money home and investing it in our communities. Do I have it? And
you basically boiled it down, and I think the option should be available. That's the other
Fair
thing.
enough.
Sometimes I think we have these races between the chosen Republican and Democrat, and sometimes it's tough to see the daylight between the two of them. So I think in this case, it's just good to have the option. Hey, if you don't want to do what they're offering, here's another choice.
Yeah, I mean, in this district, I think prior to 2008 was a Republican. So 2008 was a while ago, but Jim Himes is the current office holder, representing 4th Congressional District, is a Democrat, was swept in during the Obama wave in 2008 and has remained there ever since. He does hold a very high position in the United States government. He is on the Select Committee for Intelligence in Congress, and he is the minority chair. I forget the technical term. What that means is he's a part of the Gang of Eight, which means he is privy to the highest intelligence secrets in the United States, on par with the President of the United States. So it is a significant office that he holds, and understands at a high level where U.S. government strategy may be, and is probably in line, as you said, with whatever we're doing, and a continuation of that. Yep. So tell me about the peace. You've called yourself the peace candidate. How did that come about? How do you?
So I'm extremely concerned. I don't think. I don't think I'm out of turn for saying I think we're closer to nuclear war than we've ever been in the history of the United States. Objective groups have said this, that we're on par with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Sure.
I think President Putin said if we sent some specific ATACMS missiles to Ukraine and allowed them to fire into Russia, that they would consider that an act of war by both NATO and the United States.
Wow.
And I think he's saying the specific reasoning for that was that because it required American guidance, satellite guidance, it required American know-how. It just wasn't something that a Ukrainian soldier could fire without.
Right. I mean, it's essentially a proxy war.
Exactly. Without targeting. I'm just saying that this specific missile system required targeting, satellite reconnaissance, all the stuff. Basically, the only thing that the Ukrainian soldier would do is push the button, and everything else would be. So I think it's not out of turn for him to say, "Hey, look, you guys are actually part of this war." And it took a lot, I think, for the Biden administration to hold back from that. But that's still that particular ATACMS missile system is still on the table. So the fact that we have to fight, and the fact that we're in the public are not made more aware of it through the news media, and the fact that this is still seems like it's an option on the table, seems like we need to find leaders who are willing to at least engage in dialogue and say, and at least bring this to the fore and say, you, the American people, are you okay with this? Do you want a declaration of war and not sleepwalk our way into what would consider a World War III, basically?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the Ukraine, Russian. We've got obviously the Middle East, and then Taiwan is a powder keg that could happen at any time. What if you were elected? What would you want to do? I mean, how could you see yourself influencing legislation, or even, what's the dream? What's the goal?
Well, obviously, I'd be one of 435. I think it's 435. So there's not a lot I could do on my own. But
sure.
There are certain things that I think as an independent that you can do that maybe one of the party members can't.
Right.
Like the one distinct one is that, and I think that's more meat and potatoes, is I think prior to the 2020 election, Trump was discussing bringing, it was reported that he wanted to provide $3,000 checks to families,
right,
as part of the COVID relief. And Nancy Pelosi got on CNN and said, no, we're going to wait until after the election. And then ultimately we ended up with $1,400 checks, most people got
Sounds
$1,400
about right.
checks. Me, personally, I would have been sprinting, full sprint, running to the White House to get $3,000 checks for my people, because I do not care ultimately, if I'm an independent, I don't care if it's coming from a Democrat or if it's coming from a Republican. I care whether my people are getting taken care of. I care if I'm getting taken care of. I could use an extra $1,600. So I think that's one benefit to being an independent, is not being tied to these old constraints about what you have to do as a party member. It just seems so old-fashioned. It's like we're trying to do what's best for the country, and at that time that would have been, people really could have used that help.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that we still to this day have it's an unofficial term, but it's called the party whip, and they're there to make sure they can wrangle votes and tell you you're voting like this, and and if you're an independent person, you've got a little bit more leeway.
And the other thing is, I forget the name of the group. What is this group? The Republican group that?
No, there was the Tea Party. There's
this group of five, or ultimately they're the ones who chose Mike Johnson as they went through. We went a whole month without a speaker.
yes, yeah.
They used their leverage because they were the only group of 10 or 12 people who
were hardliners
who were willing to use their power to pick a person that was going to do the things that they want to do. And obviously, as an independent, I would also have the option to choose speaker. Sure. And if maybe it would come up that they needed my help, I would go, hey, well, let's raise the minimum wage. You got my vote, and use that leverage for something that my constituents cared about.
How much do you see your role helping the district versus being a national representative?
I would love to help the district in any way that I can. I mean, I think having possibly the schooling issue, where we're having schools shut down nationally, that seems like something that we should be addressing. And I'm sure there's other members of both parties that might want to see federal legislation specifically to address schools that are in poor condition. Okay. And I could see that happening for a lot of things. I mean, they're about to close one of the great hospitals funded by of Jewish ancestry. I think it's in New York City. They're about to close. I'm having a hard time.
I do. I am aware that I forget which.
I forget which one. But it's basically it's been around for a long time, and the idea that New York needs less housing beds it
seems kind of strange.
It seems counterintuitive, and the fact that it's one of these questions where a billionaire has said it's not economically feasible enough. It really grinds me that where the infrastructure that's needed to maintain a population is being destroyed. Basically, we need for a growing population, obviously you need more hospitals, you need more schools, not less schools and less hospitals. So
fair enough. Yeah. So you'd want to sponsor some sort of legislation to make sure that we've got more schools, more infrastructure.
Well, obviously that's one of the benefits of having more money spent on ourselves rather than spending it on wars. And again, as far as I know, the basic economic course that I took, the reason one of the big causes of inflation is the devaluation of money due to increased supply of money. So if you keep increasing, basically a printing press of money to send money abroad, the value of the money that you just earned is worth less. So, it has many benefits to advocating for peace.
Yeah, it's I remember in one of the debates and presidential debates 4 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it may have been, and the old line was, ask him how he's going to pay for it. You can come up with all sorts of pie in the sky solutions, but the question always is, how are you going to pay for it? But I have to say, you've got an idea how to pay for it. If you want to have better infrastructure here in the United States, do less abroad. I mean, fair enough. But then, of course, there's that whole military-industrial complex, which, of course, Eisenhower warned us about in 1952 in his farewell address. And, so this has been an issue that has been going on for generations. I don't know. Will it ever end? Do you see a slow decline in that structure?
I think it's got. I mean, we're coming to I think we're coming to a junction where we have to choose some fork in the road. Countries abroad are just jumping off this system. They've obviously the BRICS summit in Russia just finished, where
right.
Something like 20 heads of state got together and talking about a new payment system outside of the American, the Western payments because of sanctions, to develop themselves, to do the same things what we just talked about, building roads, bridges, dams, working with each other. I would love to participate in that. I would love to, the United States used to be a leader in development. We used to send engineers to Russia to help build their transcontinental railroad. I want to be a part of that. But, we got to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, why are people not choosing the system that exists and jumping off, doing all kinds of machinations to get off to a new system? If they're going to be sanctioned to death, if they're not allowed to be developed, they're going to find other ways, and that's what they're looking for. So I think one way or another, either militarily or economically, we gotta find a new way, a new path.
And so you endorsed Jill Stein, and Obama got a little bit of heat a week or two ago, saying that chastising black men for not supporting Kamala enough. What do you think about that?
That's a lot, man. That is a lot. Obama, President Obama, I think he left a lot of hopes unfulfilled. I voted for him twice, but there was a lot of expectations. I think people forget it wasn't just that he was black. He also came in with a lot of great policy proposals. I mean, it was supposed to be a public option associated with
yes
with the healthcare. I'm an engineer, so I was excited about. I'm always telling my wife about the trains. I'm like, I love trains. I take the train to work all the time. I love public transportation, and we were promised a brand new rail system. We were promised, there was a lot of goodies that were promised as part of getting us out of these wars. Basically, that was one of the things we want to get out of Iraq, and it was implied that we might get out of Afghanistan as well. But that wasn't to be. We started. We bombed Libya. Syria we funded civil war in Syria. There was just a lot of additional wars that we got into.
True.
A lot of more military.
But hey, he won the Nobel Peace Prize.
I don't want to go on and on, but I think that is the root of it. I think black people are just saying, hey, we listened to you. We didn't think we got a fair shake, and so we don't feel obligated to listen to you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody should be telling anybody how they should vote based upon, some sort of group that they may be affiliated with. That doesn't read right to me. I don't know.
And it was also implied that we were misogynists, and I think there's going to be some black men that vote. Jill Stein is offering reparations. I think there's going to be some black men vote for Jill Stein.
Okay, there you go.
She's a woman, so there you go.
Yeah, I don't see it as being an issue of gender. I mean, if you look on the Republican side, Nikki Haley was the last person standing outside of Trump, and she did very well, and that's on the Republican side. And I think it's more about, do you speak to me? Are you going to make my life better in some way? And at the end of the day, your race, your character, your sex, I don't think it has that much difference at this point.
Yeah, I mentioned in an interview I would love to vote for a black woman, but I mean, obviously there's got to be some policy behind it too, and I think that's the problem with the whole primary process with the Democrats. It just wasn't enough time, or they didn't.
Well, there wasn't one. I mean, that was the problem.
See, I'm already trying to be politically correct there. See, I'm already.
There wasn't one. That's the problem.
More to the point. There was not a
bothered
process.
me. Yeah, I would have wished that Biden had kept his promise and been the one-term president, the bridge president that he had promised early on, and that would have given the Democrats the opportunity. It would have given the American people the opportunity to choose the representative from that party, and basically, Kamala Harris is running, and she was picked by Biden to run, essentially, and not by the American people. And so, I don't love that idea.
And I think the American people might be having those are asking themselves similar questions. Whether that's I think the process is affecting how the outcome of the vote is gonna be.
What does your gut tell you for president?
Who's going to be president?
Yeah,
I think. Unless there's some policy changes, I have a hard time seeing Kamala winning this race. Vice President Harris winning this race. There has to be something. People are looking for change, and she could embody that change by certain policy changes.
Sure.
But I think she's been asked multiple times in the last 3 or 4 weeks, "What are you going to do different than Biden?" And most times she comes up with nothing. Specific.
It hasn't been articulated in a way that I think resonates with people. And what's bothered me about the campaign as of late, it's tending to be less about what she as president would do for me or would do for the American people, and more about this bad guy. And all of that is true, but people want to hear not about such and such as a fascist or whatever, and it's, what can you do for me?
Can I just make one more comment?
Yeah.
About the campaign in general. The idea of the Cheneys being so closely associated with the Harris campaign is really tough for me to take.
Interesting.
It's really, I get it. You're trying to, but I know there's certain compromise you have to make as a high level leader, but that one I think is a self-own, and I really don't see the benefit, and I don't know if it gives some guidance into what her insights in foreign policy are, but it is really a tough one for me to digest.
Yeah, Dick Cheney is right up there. He is a hawk of hawks, and so I can certainly see somebody, running on the peace platform that just be antithetical to everything that you stand for.
Yes.
So on your homepage, you're wearing a Malcolm X hat.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I just think it's important to try to be as forthright and honest as you can be. He was a man known for that. I just feel like a lot of that is missing right now. Hopefully we'll see that at the debate on Tuesday. I'll try to be at least that's my goal, is to be a voice for certain truths that I think are happening throughout the world as I see it. And I think he embodied that.
Okay. All right. Well, you got a debate coming up on Tuesday?
Yeah, this is going to be in Stanford at the Ferguson Library with Congressman Himes and Dr. Michael Goldstein from the Republicans, and we'll see what kind of policy differences we can share with the public.
So that's going to be live audience? Or?
Yeah, it'll be live audience. It'll be streaming.
Excellent.
So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. How can people find out more about you? How can they support you?
Well, there's yes, thank you. I think there's a contribution link on every page of my website, right. So you can use any of the 7 pages I have there. Please do. We still need the help. I have an Instagram feed that just kind of follows the campaign where it is. We'll be in Norwalk tomorrow, Fairfield. Just going up and down and visiting different communities. And that's basically how you can reach me.
All right. Well, best of luck to you. We've got 10 days remaining in the race, and it'll be a good one. And it takes a lot of stamina to do what you do. And thank you again for joining me late on a Friday night.
Thanks for having me, Mark.